I'm Andrew Murata, host of the Education, Leadership, and Beyond podcast, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you are listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Welcome to Fresh Air at 5, the podcast. I'm your host, Bryon Carpenter. Fresh Air at 5 is my regular attempt to exercise by walking about my neighborhood, to take in podcast content, then reflect in an unedited video, which I finally post to my Twitter channel. This podcast will be a regular collection of the audio from these selfie videos. You can follow me on Twitter at FreshAirAtFive or check out my website, BryonCarpenter.com, for other content I have created and collected. Hey, PLN Monday, June 14th, 2021, out for Fresh Air at 5 this morning, and it's gray out a little bit here, but it's like 14, 15 degrees Celsius, so it's a nice morning for a walk. This morning, as I'm listening to podcasts, I'm taking in the Staff Room Podcast, episode 90. Congratulations, you guys hit 9 10s. That's fantastic. And you know what? You're bringing challenge, and you're bringing new ways of thinking to, us here as we listen to your podcast. And, thank you for the topic and conversations that you have spurred me to think about and challenge me with over the recent days and these months of Fresh Air at 5, my podcast. This morning's topic, I looked at it and went, ooh, this is going to be heavy. And it is a heavy. And it's called, how do we address racism and colonial oppression in our classrooms? And as educators, we have a moral obligation to bring what's going on in the world right around us into our classroom space so that we are providing a space for students to process these kinds of things. This past, about 2 weeks ago, a week and a half or 2 weeks ago, we saw the news that there were 215 unmarked graves found at a residential school nearby where I live, 3 hours away. I'm going through that town this coming weekend as I head up to go fishing. And as I go through there, they found unmarked graves of children at this residential school. Leads to the question, what about the others? And that's been a thought that some of my students have brought up and asked as we talked about this. Also, and I know less about this. This is further from home because it's in London, Ontario, was about the Muslim family that got mowed down and murdered on the street as they were walking by a vehicle. And we have to keep these things in the fore. We have to keep these things in the present. And I'll be right back. One more thing for June 14th, 2021. And we need to keep these things so that they don't go away and we don't ignore them. And I grew up in school talking about, colonial oppression from 200-300 years previous, talking about things that go along around the world far, far away from where I live. We see this in our movies that, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, there was something going on. And it seems like it's far away and it's fictitious when we do that. But bringing it close to home was, holy cow, this is happening right here where we live. I live in Abbotsford, which is a multicultural community. And I see it even in my own town and how we, interact with other cultural groups. This guy right here is multicultural right within inside me. And, that does shape and affects how I talk to my students and what do I bring. We need to bring our current lives as teachers and our authentic selves into our classrooms. And I had an experience when I was in grade 12. Came back, and at the beginning of English class, we had to write a letter or write a 2-pager about something that happened in the summer. I talked about a racist experience that I had in Washington, D.C. When I was there in the summer at the Smithsonian Institute, and how I felt about being called a black person in the United States, in the country's capital, at, like a national monument. And it really affected me. My teacher saddled up beside me after he read that and said, "I can relate." And I looked at him and went, "How can you relate?" And he's a white guy. And he says, "I grew up in Ireland, and I experienced racism as a boy living in Ireland, and from the Catholic and Protestant tension that's there. I don't even understand that." But the whole point is that he related to me. I didn't get a whole lot of anti-racism conversation growing up because it was far, far away. One more thing for June 14th, 2021. I just got myself turned around because I was engaged in what I was talking about so much. Forgot which way I was going this morning. All right. So thank you, Chan Pav, for the Staff Room Podcast, episode 90, as we're talking about how to talk about racism and and colonial oppression in our classrooms. And it's something that we should not shy away from. We need to be there for our students because it's affecting our students beyond this. I liked, Pav, how you talked about where students get their news and how students are getting their news from TikTok. And I'm thinking that that's the crazy place because I'm not a TikTok guy. But you know what? It's so true. How much of our news do we get as adults from Facebook? And news outlets are putting their stuff on Facebook, but other people are putting news on Facebook of things that they are seeing, and we're getting biased opinions there as we take reads and looks at this. So talking about digital citizenship with our students and critical thinking about being able to go, is this authentic? Is this real? And yeah, sometimes we see things on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram, and they're very emotional in the way they respond to something that has happened. And we have to go and now start thinking about how does social media affect the way we think. Social media is affecting the way our students think, and we as educators need to get into those trenches and understand some of this. Okay, am I solving this today? No, we're not solving this today. Are you kidding me? Jay and Pav just brought to light something that we need to be attentive to and mindful of. Thank you, Jay and Pav, for your thoughts. This is 3 segments right now about anti-racism and colonial oppression that we see around us. We need to be mindful about this and the language that we use. Thanks so much, guys. Appreciate you. Talk to you. Bye. One last thing for June 14th, 2021. Rounding the corner to home here, I'm listening to the Good News, Brad News Show, episode number 22, as he has Craig Randall, who's the author of Trust-Based Observations, talking about how school leaders and administrators can conduct teacher evaluations and observations to make them meaningful and impactful in their schools. And my experience with teacher evaluations has been that I've performed, and then I get a grade, and then there's a report that's written. And yes, so that's been my experience in the past. And we have not done them as regularly in my district. They're supposed to be done every 3 years. And that means that, we're getting feedback every once in a while. I like what you have to say, Craig, about having the regular, frequent, observations where an administrator comes in and just builds trust with their teachers. And as a building administrator walking into someone's room, for the first time, and with the clipboard and the check boxes and all that stuff, that projects a critical thinking on the teacher that there's something wrong that I'm doing. And, we get pretty sensitive about this and start to question whether we're doing a good job. And you know what, teachers? We are doing a good job. If we can honestly say to ourselves that we're doing the best that we can with what we know. We're doing a good job. Can we grow? Absolutely. Yes, we can. And I like how, Craig, you talked about this rubric at the beginning of the year that teachers do a self-evaluation, and I'd like to see that rubric. So I'm going to reach out to you and ask if you can send that to me. I appreciate the conversation here. Thanks, Brad, for having Craig on. Thanks for challenging our thinking, and trust is key. Have a great day. Bye. Hey, PLN, Tuesday, June 15th, 2021, out here for Fresh Air at 5 this morning. And it's a bit foggy out there this morning. I woke up and could hardly see across the street, but now it's cleared and it's much clearer and nicer. The sun is coming up and burning off the fog. So yes, enjoying my morning walk. This morning as I'm out walking, I listened to episode 91 of the EdTech Bites podcast with Gabriel Carrillo. And he had guest on Roxy Thompson, who is a tech integration coach in Phoenix, Arizona. And Roxy, I've been to Arizona a couple times and did some hiking to the east of Mesa, up a gully, up a canyon, and it was just beautiful to see the red rock and the desert. And yeah, we got out early one morning before the heat started to get going on our hiking. So that was fantastic. Glad to hear that you enjoy hiking and getting out and challenging your body with physical activity. Such a great thing. That's why I do what I do here, as I walk every morning and listen to podcasts. So do you take in any podcasts while you're out hiking, or is it just all about being right out there in nature? When I'm hiking, I do not listen to podcasts, but I'm engaged in the forest and nature around me. This here, I'm walking on the street, so this is my time to reflect and listen to podcasts and do some professional development for myself. Thank you for sharing your journey of being a tech integration coach during the pandemic, and Gabe for bringing your perspective as well. And one thing that I picked up on that, we all need to be mindful of as we are working with others that don't know what we know is to be patient with them. One of my students, an adult student, came in for some help with math and asked, well, shouldn't everybody know this? And I'm like, well, it's one of those things that, a lot of people do know. And if I was going to say, yeah, why don't you know this? Go away and be impatient with you, then I'm not doing my job as an educator. So let's be patient, people. Have a fantastic day. Bye. One more thing for June 15th, 2021, listening to the Easy EdTech podcast with Monica Burns, episode 116. Thank you, Monica, for bringing us a music teacher, and Jessica Presta, who has a consultancy business right now. She used to be an elementary music teacher, and it's so fantastic to hear about other areas that I am not comfortable and competent in, and it's just me opening my mind. And Jessica, thank you for bringing the value of music education to us in our ears today. Me, I am not a music teacher. I enjoy music. I teach technology and video production and have gotten into podcasting, and there's a whole lot of music that can go into that, talking about themes and things. And so I appreciate you challenging us to integrate music into our classroom. And I do use some of the Google tools a little tiny bit to just dabble with sound in my space. So it's fantastic to hear. You have the Elementary Music Teacher podcast, which people can go and listen to and get some more music education, professional development for themselves. I'm going to pass along your podcast to some of my elementary teachers that are working my building and share some of the learning that I have done this morning so that they can grow in their practice. Thanks, Monica, for bringing Jessica on and sharing music with us. Music education is so essential, and without exposing our students to things that we are not necessarily comfortable and competent with, will not be relationship building and growing those connections for students, and some students may really find a space. So I'm going to take a look at the DJ site, because I think that might be fun for my students to play with and just to dabble with. And I am not a music teacher, and I'm not going to say yet, but I will incorporate music into my space a little bit more. Appreciate. Have a fantastic day. Talk to you. Bye-bye. One last thing for June 15th, 2021, as I'm making the corner to come home here, I listened to the Knock Knock Who's There podcast with Chris and Miles, as today's joke is about money. So take a listen. Fantastic. And there's an opening line for you can use with everyone you talk to today, your students, etc., as you open up your day. Fantastic. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Miles. Have a good day, guys. Bye. Hey, PLN, June 16th, 2021. I'm out here in the evening as the sun is setting behind me for my Fresh Air at 5 walk, which is much delayed today, as this morning I woke up after getting my Pfizer second dose yesterday, and my arm hurt really bad and I was really lethargic, and that's the only symptoms that I experienced, but it's for the vaccine, but you know, it took it out of me this morning. So I went back to bed, got my son up, got him out the door for work. Then I went back to bed. That's okay, because, hey, I'm here now. I bounced back around noon today, and it's been a fantastic day of working with students and seeing the smiles of our students at our school as they are wrapping up their school year and all the activities of year end for them, which was really exciting. All right, this evening as I'm out walking, I listened to episode 50 of Overthrowing Education with Bathsheba Frankel. And Bathsheba, top drawer, thanks, well done. And you know what? I really enjoy listening to your podcast. It gives me a different perspective on learning and thinking from your perspective as a teacher in your space, and how you share with your guests, and you banter and you talk about the different facets of education. And this episode 50, you had Avia Leving on your show. I probably said her name wrong, but she was a guest on your show, and she's an improv teacher, and as well as you, and you guys did a great job of talking about your learning and transparency. And you know what? I really appreciate the conversation about transparency. It's something that I believe in, and I wasn't sure if it was just me or whether it's actually important. And I hear from you, the two of you, that it's super important that we are transparent with our students. I talk about my life outside of school often. I don't talk about all the nitty-gritty details of the challenging hardships, but the cool things that we do, going hiking, my podcast that I've got going on here, I share that experience with them, get them thinking about podcasting, one of my classes that started up a podcast, etc., etc. Be transparent, be you in your classroom. Thanks. Bye-bye. And one more thing for June 16th, as I'm wrapping up this evening, the topic of transparency in the classroom and how we as teachers are transparent about how we learn, where we learn, what do we do to learn. I think it's important for our students to know that we're out there working to make their experience better. Speaking of transparency, tomorrow I'm giving my secondary students a Mr. Carpenter evaluation, asking how I can improve. And I told them I'm not marking it, and I'm not taking a look at it until after I get the report cards done. So I'm excited to see and hear what they have to say. Am I worried? Nope, not worried. I am, excited to see what they talk about, because I have things that I think I can work on for next year to make my teaching space and my practice and the art of teaching better. But we'll have to see if they think about those things as well. All right, that's all for tonight. Have a fantastic evening and enjoy the evening. It's beautiful out there and the sun is setting on the valley. Okay, bye. Hey, PLN, Thursday, June 17th, 2021, and today is the last day of class for my secondary students as they come into the building. It's assessment week already coming up, and so exams will be happening, and so we don't have class next week for my media design students. So yes, it's a sad day. I'm going to be missing my students in the future because we've had a great run this year of content creation and graphic design and podcasting and other things like that. So it's been quite fantastic. All right. So this morning, as I'm out for my walk, last night I listened to Overthrowing Education with Bathsheba Frankel, and she had guest on Aviva Levin of the Lesson Impossible podcast. So Aviva, I decided to take a listen this morning to your podcast. Listening to episode 65 of season 4 of Lesson Impossible podcast, you had guest on Pawan Dingara. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, but you had a guest on who talked about their work that they do with Asian immigrant families and students in our education system here in North America. And it was fascinating to me to hear the research that you've done about how we interact with our Asian immigrant families and their children, and the challenges that we face. This was an eye-opening podcast to me. I'm pretty open-minded and don't think that I have bias, but I got a lot of bias that I need to take care of, and approaches to how I see students and understanding their culture, culturally sensitive to their needs from home, what are families looking for in their education, and all those kinds of things. So it was encouraging to hear. I appreciate the conversation, Aviva and Pawan, and thank you for sharing your work that you do. And I am going to be more mindful as I go forward and think about how I take care of students and their families. Have a great day. Bye-bye. One more thing for June 17th, 2021. I just completed listening to Lesson Impossible, episode 65 of season 4 with Aviva Levin and Pawan Dingara as they talk about Asian immigrant families and students in our education system. Okay. People that are listening right now, I would encourage you to all go listen to Aviva's podcast in regard to this, because, you know, we do great things in our spaces, but are we taking care of all of our students the way that we need to be taking care of them? This is not just about Asian culture. This is about all culture. But now, I'm not watering this down. I'm asking us to think about the challenges that I heard represented in this podcast by Aviva and Pawan as they talk about culturally sensitive teaching. And how do we do that? It's just not about not talking about certain topics, but what do we understand about expectations about education, the pressures that are on students, and those types of things. So I would encourage you and challenge you to go take a listen to Aviva's episode, and share back here. Let me know if you listened, because I think it's important for us to do. I'm thinking particularly of Che and Pav, because the two of you on the Staff Room podcast talk a lot about these kinds of things because of the teaching space that you are in. So thanks for doing that. And Aviva and Pawan, again, appreciate it. Have a good day. PLN. It's June 18th, 2021. A beautiful morning here for Fresh Air at 5 walk out in my neighborhood. Turned on my podcast catcher this morning, and guess what popped up? The band is back together. That's right, Shooks and Giff with Kim Polishuk. She joined Jen Giffen this past episode that they recorded yesterday and just dropped episode 11 of season 4. And Kim, nice to see you again. Well, I hear you. It's like seeing you. That's what podcasting is like. You know, after you do this for a while, it's like you see the people in your head as they're talking, because, you hang out, and if you listen to my voice and then my podcast, you might go, hey, I seen his face on Twitter. And so anyhow, I listened to their episode. It was fabulous to hear them back together talking. And Kim, so good to hear that you got your puppy. So nice. And Jen, get those stickers to Kim. So that's an excuse. You guys got to get together and see each other here soon. So that's fabulous. And I like all the year-end activities that you talked about on your podcast, all the great shares about music, and that play with keyboard on YouTube. That's crazy how we can make timestamps and shortcut keys on our keyboard to get us to different spots. I like that as a creative way to record content and then have it be shareable and accessible right now. Back in the day with the cassette tape, this wouldn't have worked. You know, fast forwarding and rewinding to those times, that wouldn't have worked. So this is probably a much better way to go. All right, so I'm just taking a deep breath here on a Friday morning, enjoying my walk. It's been a full week, super full. Got my second dose of Pfizer, so I'm pretty psyched about that. And we got our travel restrictions lifted this week here. So this evening, my friends and I and my wife are going to a resort to go stay overnight, and we're going to go fishing at some lakes around there tomorrow. So I'm really excited about that because I haven't been able to go spring fishing like I wanted to. All right, ladies, have a fabulous day. Everybody else, have a fabulous day. Enjoy the sunrise. Bye.
As my one word for 2021 is appreciate, I appreciate you giving me a listen as I've created this podcast experience for you. It's a unique Blinkist or Coles Notes version of the content I take in, like a highlight reel, so that you can hopefully find other interesting podcasts you may not have considered before. I've recorded the specific podcast episodes in the show notes for your learning convenience. Please subscribe so you don't miss any of my upcoming episodes. And if you enjoy this podcast and its format, share it with someone else. Tweet about your experience or give it a review on Apple Podcast or wherever you listen to podcasts. Fresh Air at 5 can also be found on Voice Ed Radio. Your voice is right here, and on the Education Podcast Network, Podcasts for Educators, Podcasts by Educators. I hope you have a fantastic day and get some fresh air before the day is out, and take care of yourself because you're worth it.